The moment the front door slammed open and the woman I had once loved froze in the doorway, everything I had carefully rebuilt over the last year collapsed in a single breathless second, because Vera Langston wasn't supposed to see me there, standing in her mother's kitchen with paint on my hands and receipts spread across the table like evidence of a crime I could never explain fast enough. Before anything else, if this story touches your heart, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to our channel if you believe in kindness, forgiveness, hope, and second chances, because stories like this remind us that even broken paths can still lead back to love. The house on Aldridge Street had once been bright in Vera's memories, but time had worn it down like an old photograph left too long in the sun. I had been hired to fix the leaking roof, but somehow I stayed longer than the job required, pulled into the quiet gravity of Evelyn Hartwell's failing health and the way she pretended she didn't need help when everything around her told a different story. I never planned to be in that kitchen that afternoon, sunlight pouring through the half-drawn curtains, my sleeves rolled up, sorting through medical invoices and overdue utility notices that Evelyn had hidden inside a biscuit tin as if paper could stop reality from arriving. Then Vera walked in. She looked exactly like the memory I had tried to bury and nothing like the forgiveness I had learned to hope for. Her coat was still on, hair slightly wind-tossed from the street outside, and her eyes carried that same sharp disbelief that once ended everything between us. I could see it immediately, her mind rewriting the past in real time, placing me into a version of events where I never belonged anywhere good for long. She wasn't supposed to be there. She had been gone for years, building a life in another city, sending rare messages that never quite healed the distance she left behind. And yet here she was, standing in her mother's kitchen, staring at me as if I had broken in instead of quietly holding together the parts of this house that were falling apart. Evelyn Hartwell appeared behind her daughter moments later, moving slowly with the careful steps of someone whose body no longer trusted her intentions. Her face lit up with relief when she saw me, not Vera, and that alone made everything more complicated than it already was. Because in that instant, I understood that whatever Vera believed she had come back to find, it was not going to match the truth waiting for her here. The air between us tightened as Vera's gaze swept across the kitchen table, documents, unpaid bills, medication schedules, repair lists, all the things I had tried to organize before Evelyn noticed how bad it had become. I could almost see the conclusion forming in Vera's mind, the same conclusion she had reached years ago when she left without looking back, that I was always in the wrong place at the wrong time, always tangled in something I could never explain cleanly enough to be believed. But nothing about this was what it looked like. Months earlier, I had returned to Aldridge Street only for a quick repair job. Evelyn had called the contractor company herself, her voice thin but determined. The roof was collapsing, the plumbing barely functioning, and the house was slipping toward foreclosure. I was supposed to fix it and leave, nothing more. But she reminded me of the kind of person who once mattered to Vera, and that made it impossible to treat her like just another client. Evelyn didn't have much left. What she did have was pride, and she used it like armor. She refused help, refused charity, refused even to admit how often she forgot to take her medication. So I started coming back, first for repairs, then for groceries she insisted she didn't need, then for the quiet administrative chaos that threatened to bury her. Somewhere along the way, I stopped being just a contractor and became the person who made sure her lights stayed on and her prescriptions were filled on time. I never told Vera. Not because I was ashamed, but because I knew how easily my presence could be misunderstood by someone who already had every reason to misunderstand me. And now she was here. Vera's voice trembled when she finally spoke, accusing without words, filling the room with years of unresolved hurt. I didn't interrupt her, because I had learned that explanations spoken too early often sound like excuses, and excuses were all she had ever heard from me before she left. Instead, I simply stepped back from the table, letting her see everything, letting her decide what kind of story she wanted this to be. But Evelyn moved before either of us could break completely. She reached for her daughter's hand with a strength that surprised even me. Her voice, soft but steady, cut through the tension like sunlight through clouds. She told Vera that I had been the only reason she hadn't lost the house, the only reason she hadn't ended up in a care facility she couldn't afford, the only reason she had not spent the last year alone in a failing home that was slowly swallowing her dignity. Vera didn't respond at first. Instead, she looked at me as if she was searching for the version of me she remembered, the one she had once loved enough to trust before everything between us fractured beyond repair. And for the first time since she arrived, I saw something other than accusation in her eyes. I saw confusion. And beneath that, something more fragile, regret that had been waiting for an excuse to surface. The truth, when it finally unfolded, wasn't dramatic in the way anger usually is. It came in pieces. A stack of paid bills Evelyn thought had gone unpaid. A maintenance log I had kept without telling anyone. A series of small fixes that had prevented large disasters. A bank notice showing I had quietly covered one overdue payment when Evelyn's account nearly collapsed. I had never intended to be a hero in any of it. I had simply refused to let a kind woman lose everything because life had decided to be unkind. But to Vera, it meant something more complicated. Because it forced her to reconsider the version of me she had carried away all those years ago. And nothing is more difficult than realizing the story you believed about someone might have been incomplete. The kitchen felt different now. Less like a place of confrontation, more like a space where truth had finally been allowed to breathe. Sunlight shifted across the counter as the hours passed, though none of us noticed time moving at first. Evelyn eventually sat down, exhausted by more than her illness, while Vera remained standing, caught between the past and the present version of me she was only beginning to see. When Vera finally spoke again, her words were quieter. Not an apology, not yet, but something closer to recognition. She admitted she had left because she believed I would never change, never become the kind of person who stayed when things got hard. And standing there, surrounded by evidence that I had stayed exactly where it mattered most, she looked as if that belief had begun to fracture. I didn't ask her to forgive me. I didn't ask her to stay. I had learned that some things cannot be demanded, only understood when the time is right. Instead, I focused on Evelyn, making sure she was comfortable, checking the list I had prepared for her medication later that day, quietly continuing the work I had been doing long before Vera walked back into the house. But something had shifted. Not suddenly, not dramatically, but enough that even silence felt different. Later that afternoon, as sunlight began to soften through the kitchen window, Vera helped her mother sort through a pile of unopened letters. It was a small gesture, almost ordinary, but it carried more weight than anything said out loud. She moved closer to me without realizing it at first, close enough that the past no longer felt like a wall between us, but something we might eventually walk around. Evelyn watched both of us with a tired kind of hope, the kind that only appears when people she loves are finally in the same room without breaking it apart. Nothing was resolved in a perfect way. Life rarely offers that kind of neat ending. But something fragile had begun to mend, not the past itself, but the way we were willing to look at it. Vera didn't ask me to leave. I didn't step away. And for the first time in years, silence between us didn't feel like distance. It felt like space where understanding might finally grow. Before this story ends, take a moment to leave a meaningful comment about forgiveness, second chances, or what it means to see someone differently after believing you already knew them. Your words might inspire someone who needs it today. And if this story touched your heart, please like this video, leave a meaningful comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to our channel so you never miss another emotional journey. Because sometimes, the people we think we lost forever are simply waiting for the truth to catch up with them.